Hey everyone, this is Norbert. We had our SUDA pre-release event this weekend at our locals, which I attended, and I went there having prepared a Crystron deck and a Primite Fiendsmith deck. I could not get my hands on a barrel, so everyone who's waiting for the SUDA decklist for that, stay tuned. I'm trying to get one, and then put out the video when I have it. But I got all the Crystron cards. Obviously they're low rarity, and I went there, I did some theory questing for that. Shoutouts to Atrocity and Jenny TCG. Both are on Twitter, and I will link them down below. Jenny also made a combo video on Crystron for pure combos, but also I think Fiendsmith was in there and Adventurer. So I'll link that below as well. I'll reference it in my combos. Check that out for sure. But Crystron felt really good. Especially the new Triceros is crazy good. Into Handtraps, you just normal summon it, and your engine often doesn't need the normal summon, so you just play it. If they Handtrap you, you just get a free synchro off it. Also, since everyone is on Fiendsmith, people are countering it with Bestials, which do nothing against your water monsters, right? So that's a really huge advantage for that as well. And to top it all off, the deck is super budget. Now, you've seen probably that Quarion and Citri went up in price a lot, but I think currently that's a spike, but they went up. I hope they get reprinted, and still, even if you buy those, you are still looking at a very, very cheap deck, especially if you run the list like I do, which has one Quarion and one Citri, which I think is my personal preferred way to play. There are obviously others who play 2 Citri, for example, or 2 Quarion. But in general, these cost you at the moment about 40 euros here together, and then the rest is little pennies. Especially the extra deck is like weird monsters that haven't seen play in years. And the deck's a lot of fun. It plays a grind game. It has non-engine space. It's just a blast to play. You can have different lines depending on hand traps, and even like turn skips don't like Lancea don't annoy you that much sometimes. I'll show that all in the video. So yeah, let's just hop right into the deck profile. Alright, so hopping into the deck profile, we have the main deck, extra deck, and this time also have the side deck prepared, because I already had it ready, so why not talk to you about the logic behind it. But let's start with the main deck. So let's put these aside first. And we play 3 of the new Triceros, the new tuner. This card is extremely good. It lets you play through interactions so well. Oftentimes you don't need your normal summon in this, so you can normal summon this, start playing, and if your opponent interacts at any point, you just get whatever you need out of your deck and play from there. Plus makes you nib proof too, because from this, if they nib you, you chain, go into Samurai Destroyer, which revives something after nib, and then you just play from there. And also, it also has a graveyard effect, because why not? Destroys a monster, a synchro monster, and then specials 2 from the deck. Usually brings you into Cyber Dragon Infinity while popping a Crystron synchro, which also will trigger on destruction. So this card does it all. That's why I maxed it out. I've played with 2 on the weekend. I didn't miss the 3 per se, but if I had it, I was always happy. So like I maxed it out now. Next up, we have 3 of the Smiger. This is a 1-card starter that takes up your normal summon. It's not the best way to start, because you use your normal summon and you have 2 extra summons into nib. But it does get the job done, and you want Crystron names in your deck for the resource game, or also for like 2-card combos with something like Sulfafnir. So Smiger definitely a 3 of. I wouldn't go down at any point. Speaking of Sulfafnir, we maxed this one out. This is a level 5. This combos on its own if you have a Crystron card to discard with it. Doesn't use up your normal summon. It's nice to play through disruption. And also for the grind game, it's a level 5. You will get these out of the deck a lot, so max this out. Speaking of level 5s, we also have 2 of the Sulfador. I had 3 yesterday, but drawing this is just worse than drawing the Sulfafnir, because you have to normal summon a Crystron and then pop it, and it doesn't combo on its own, and usually for the grind game these 5 were enough. So I cut this down to 2, put in the 3rd Tristalos that I found after locals. So 5 of those is pretty good. If you want, if you want more Crystron Engine, more waters, you can obviously put this to 3. It's not a bad card. The deck is very tight. Speaking of water names, I decided to play 2 this turn. You can obviously just play 1, but you'll see in a second we play Tidal in this deck, so I want to have the water ratio up high, and this is just a better discard of Tidal than, say, this card, right? Because if Tidal gets ashed and you have this engraved and you don't have a Crystron, you don't do anything, whereas this still combos. It also is a good discard with the Solfefnir, so same logic applies there. And then we play the 1 Citri. You can play 2, but you don't really want to draw it. The 2 would just be for the grind game, and if you only have 1, you just have to be more careful with your cluster shuffles, and it's generally fine. Obviously we play it because we want another tuner for Tristaros to summon, but also it is a synchro summon on your opponent's turn. Not as good as the Tristaros because you can only synchro with what you revive, but it's still good, and it banishes what you use for a synchro, which is not that relevant because you have the cluster. Then we have 3 of the inclusion. This is generally the best Crystron starter here because it's 1 card and it has a minimum amount of summons, whereas Smiger you have to summon twice before you get to this, and then you also don't have the Smiger for the search on cluster, so you lose a bit of flexibility there. Whereas this just does it all. And it's also a revive, and on the field it also has a battle protection. So might come up sometimes if one wants to break your board. You generally want to get into a grind game, and then at some point you just query on them. And if you query on them, usually they don't have resources left. You gain so much tempo and advantage. Usually game is over by then. Then we obviously play the 1 cluster. This card is so good. It's Chuche 2.0, if anyone here played Virtual World, and recycles your resources. It pops 1/2 cards per turn. It protects your cards by being banished. It's just so good, and even if they out this, you can just recycle it with your Skeletus. So this just the win condition. Usually when I play, I prioritize getting to this because it's just so good. This plus Tristaros, usually like it's just Shenshin Chuche, basically. Most non-virtual world players will not know what I'm babbling about right now. We play the Speedrun engine, Terrortop and Taketamborg. I was on Azamina. I considered playing 3 Fenris and a Rysart because that also gets you to Cherubini. But I just thought this engine was the least committal way of playing because you don't use your normal summon, you don't have to use extra deck space, it doesn't make your side deck patterns worse. It's just a good standalone engine, and even if you have Crystron engine, this still does a lot for you through Handtraps, or it just sets up an SP. I was considering Fenrir because Fenrir is good going second as well, but then I considered you can just special Terrortop and Taketamborg, make the machine link one, and then you link both into SP, and SP is also very strong going second because it banishes on summon and then threatens another banish, and you still have your normal summon after that. So going second, this is still fine. Next up, we're nearing the end of the engine. We have 2 Tidal and 1 Foolish, just to have 3 ways to send something into the grave. Tidal in general, pretty nice to ditch a Crystron that you don't need in your hand. You have a lot of them, and then you mill a Crystron, whatever you need. So even if Tidal gets hand trapped, if you dumped a Smiger off your hand, you can still banish that Smiger, get your inclusion, get going from there, but you didn't have to normal summon the Smiger. And then Foolish just does the same, just without any other water in hand, right? So these are just worse Foolishes, but on the follow-up you can get a level 7 water back for what it's worth. That's it for the engine, and then for non-engine, if you followed this channel for a long time, I just go very vanilla. I don't try to be very cute usually, so because at locals I can see anything, right? If you have more condensed metagame, for example, if your locals is full of Fiendsmith, then consider playing Bestials. Magnamut in general is very good because Magnamut can search titles, so you can cut down to one title, and if you magnum with them, end phase search title, and suddenly you have a starter. But for that, I just went with the most vanilla Handtraps, so Ash, Veiler, Nib, Ogre, and Imperm. Everything came up except for the Ogre, I think, which is obviously the worst Handtrap out of them. But it's still a good Handtrap. Like, I don't know, unless I had a Charmy, maybe I would play that. For example, Purulia is a water, so it works with title. That's a consideration in that slot. But I don't own the Charmies because they're getting reprinted, so I'm just gonna wait on them. On the extra deck, I have sorted the extra deck because the extra deck is very lenient. So I sorted the extra deck on how often certain cards came up, so that if you build this deck, you know which cards to cut potentially. So the cards that I always made were the Skeletus, oftentimes 2, just your starter or your recovery, just does everything for the deck. Then you have your main interaction piece, which is the Cyberdragon Infinity package, Cyberdragon Nova. For that package, I also have the Mechaba, but that never came up because people didn't nib here. We have the Dawn Dragster as another interaction piece, although I guess before the Dawn Dragster comes the Cherubini, came up more often because of the Terrortop Engine. This just sends any level 3 from your deck to the grave, so usually Smiger or Crystron, basically just these two. Whatever you need, you just send with this, and oftentimes if you have the Terrortop Engine, if you have one of the others, like Crystron or Smiger, you can then normal summon that card, link into SP, that gives you another Imperm protection, another interaction piece, and you also got another Crystron in the grave. So very neat package. We obviously have the Clockwork Knight as a link 1 for our machines, and we have the SP Little Knight just so we can do something with the Cherubini. Although I have played against Tenpai yesterday, and they still ran like Darkholds and Raigekis, and the other one was on Striker. So actually you can leave the Cherubini in certain matchups on the board because whatever this points to cannot be destroyed by card effects. Now, this says cannot be destroyed by card effects, so that includes your own. So be careful if you put a Crystron in there, like a Solve, summon that there, or if you summon your Ille there and you want to pop it with Tristros, that's not possible because Cherubini protects it. So try to keep them out of those zones. But post combo, you want to have your Infinity protected and your Tristros if you expect something that destroys. Speaking of destroying, we have Samurai Destroyer. Usually this is just nib insurance. If they nib you while you have Tristaros, summon a 5, go into this. If this gets removed by your opponent, you can revive a machine, either any Crystron, or if you have the Tristaros in grave and want to use it, you just get this back. It can summon itself and banish the Tristaros, pop this, summon 2 Crystrons, and go from there. It also has an effect that if it battles a monster, that monster's effect is negated. Didn't come up yet, but might be useful in some niche scenarios, so don't forget about that effect. Then we have the one Quirion Gandrax. Now, you might wonder why the win con of the deck is so far low. Usually my opponents scooped before this came out, but obviously you have to play this because this is the threat that is looming at all times, and if you get this out, you win usually. Very good against Fiendsmith too, because you just remove their graveyard resources. So yeah, only play 1. I had 2 yesterday, but again, my logic is if you get this out, usually that's game. And also, if you need the other one, you can shuffle back this one with your Crystron cluster. So unless you play against a lot of Kashtira unicorns, you don't want the second one, in my opinion. But you have a lot of space in the extra deck, so if you don't use any of these cards and just want the second one, that's also fine. We have the Typhon. Didn't make this. This is the segment where the cards come out that I didn't make. Because it's a Fiend, usually you're Fiend locked. I just had the extra space. So if you want to play another Quirion over this, or another tech slot, Powered Insectron is a very funny card against Tenpai. But yeah, there's just, sometimes you can just play into a board and you have the Tristaros, make something else, put this out the threat, run over another threat, and you have the Tristeros plus cluster. Sometimes enough. We have the Mecha Bomb. This is just insurance if they nib you on Nova. It's kind of a weird card to include because you kind of never need it, because people should learn that you don't nib on Nova. But once you cut it and they start doing it, or if your opponent just doesn't know the combo, then they nib you there, and yeah. Very weird inclusion. I just have it in right now because it started the format. People don't know how Crystron plays, so they might nib the Nova. We have the Navy Dragon mech. Also haven't made this. This is just level 9. If you have a 7 and the Tristeros, you can make this for interruption. But it's a very weird interruption because on summon it negates. So your opponent activates something, that effect goes through, and then you negate something. It's more for continuous cards often. So definitely cuttable. Especially if you don't run like a Diabell Star or Kashtira engine, you don't really have 7s that you want to protect. Then we have the Legacia. I didn't make this, but I still think this is good, especially against Malice, because Malice, you want to deny them bodies, but if you query on them, you just banish them, and all you do is take out the once per turn triggers of the Malice monsters. So instead, with your 3 monsters, you want to do a Legacia, summon this, draw a card, pop a monster, and that's card advantage, plus you take out a Malice monster from board, and obviously they can extend from there, but you have more interactions, and this is just a good way to remove a body for them. And the last card is the card that I put in for the Quarion. So there's no, I can't say how often this will come up, but when I played, I kind of missed this card, like a 5 that I can go to from Tristeros. Basically, if your opponent interacts with you in any way, oftentimes during your combo, special summon a Smiger or a Crystron, go into this with the Tristeros, and then you can get the search of that monster. It's basically a Foolish. Plus, if this card is destroyed, you can summon a Crystron from your grave. So what you can do is banish the Tristeros, pop this, special 2 monsters, and then you can revive any other monster, Crystron, for example, a second Tristeros if you have it, and put it on board. So pretty decent for that. Now, lastly, we go to the side deck. We have the Bestial package. I had the Magnamut in the main over the second title, because this can search title, but I didn't face many Fiendsmiths until the finals. So if your locals is full of Fiendsmith, just play this in the main. It's pretty nice with the title, otherwise you can put it in the side. Druid's Worm is very strong. Another consideration you can do is play these 2 in the main, plus the title, so that you have a small package of dragons where Magnamut can either go Druid's Worm if you want to out something, or title if you need a starter. Then the most important package in the side deck is the anti-turn skip brigade, because you will get shifted, you will get Mulch Army. The new Mulch Army is decent against this. You will get did I say Shifter? Shifter, Lancia, and Mulch Army. That's the 3 cards, and usually you have lines against them, but especially through Tristeros and sometimes also the cluster. But having that extra piece of interaction is just very good into those turn skip Handtraps. I got shifted or Lancia every round except for the finals, and sometimes I had the thrust, which helped me out a lot with the barrier. Opponent had plays through the barrier, but obviously this is still puts a huge threat on the opponent. There were also rounds where I didn't have them and just could play still and put up a board that was good enough to survive, backed up by Handtraps obviously. But if you can just do something against those, then that's obviously better. So thrust, 2 turn skip cards, and a call by. Speaking of turn skip, Lancia, Malice, very good right now, and the Handtraps we use in the main deck are still not enough, except for the Nib, which is very good. The other cards are iffy, so having the Lancia, very good. I would play a Fuvaros here if I had it, but so far I'm just going with Droll, which is also a card against big combo decks, oftentimes not Malice unless they're on the Striker version. If they are, then Droll is good against them, otherwise it's okay. But yeah, this deck going second, you want something against the card. This can deal with like small boards and then take out resources with Quarium, but against big boards where you can't even play, you kind of want something like this. Alright, that's it for the profile. Let's check out some combos. Alright, so let's hop into the basic Smiger 1-card combo. You probably have seen this before, but I just included it here for completeness sake. After that, I will go more into depth into the Terrortop combos. So if you want more basic Crystron combos, make sure to check out Jenny's channel. That's in the description. She has a good video on the pure combos, talks over them, and also has like something on Adventurer and Kashtira. So everything I don't cover here, check out in that video. But for the standard combo, there are 2 lines. They're also covered in her video. I'll just show the line that I like to make. So if you have the Smiger, you normal summon it, obviously. Link it off for the Clockwork. And then you can banish the Smiger to get Inclusion. Inclusion gets you Sulfador, which can summon itself, popping the Inclusion. And then Sulfador will mill 2 cards. This is the branching point. I like to send Cluster and Tristaros because I really prioritize having Cluster online. So in this case, usually in the other line you would send Thistvern and Sulfafnir, so that you can summon from there and have the revive still, but I like getting the cluster. So you have to use your revive here. Get out the Tristaros. This is summon number 4. So what's nice is on summon number 5 we get the Skeletos. So even after nib we at least have the cluster, which I value a lot. And the best possible nib moment is chaining to the Tristaros from grave. So you got Tristaros here. If they don't have a nib, you pop this, get out 2 level 5s, and that'll trigger the Skeletos, giving out the Tristaros, and with these 2 5s you go into Nova, into Infinity, set the cluster, and from here on you can also decide whether you want to eat the Clockwork with the Infinity, because that gives you a bit more attack points, plus the Clockwork only has 500 attack, so it's easily run over by. So what you end on is the Omni Negate. You have this Tristaros Synchro into a 7 or a 5. So that'll be Amatrix or the Dawn Dragster, and you have a pop off of Cluster. Whereas if you do the other line, you don't have the Cluster, but you will have another body here, so you can make a Quarion. So yeah. Decide what you want, what combo you want to do. I liked this one because I just think Cluster is such a good card to have in rotation. Alright, that's the 1-card Smiger combo. Let's go into the more interesting combos. Alright, Terrortop. Terrortop is the secondary engine here I run. Doesn't use your normal summon, so if you have the Terrortop, you can special get out the Targeton Borg. We can count the summons here. This is 1, this is 2. And then for summon number 3, you go Cherubini. Cherubini sends for cost, which is very nice. Can't get Veilard. I mean, can get Veilard, but then you lose the attack buff, which, whatever. Get the Smiger, banish it, get the Inclusion. Inclusion searches Sulfador. And basically just the same as the Smiger, but instead of the Clockwork, you have the Cherubini here, plus you haven't used your normal summon. But you're a +1 summon as comparison, but that doesn't matter that much, you'll see in a second. So you get the Sulfador with the Inclusion, pop it, summon, and then you mill 2. Again, I prioritize the cluster here, and then you send these 2. So if you count it, that's 2, 3, 4 summons. Now on the 5th summon, you will revive the Tristaros. Now they could nib you here, and I'll go over the nib line in a second, but let's just say we're playing the combos normally. It's the same as we did before. You synchro these 2 for Skeletos, get the trap back, and banish the Tristaros to pop, and get these 2 out. And this will get back the Tristaros, and then from there you're gonna go into the Nova and the Infinity, and if you want you can put them here. And the Tristaros you can also put here to protect with the Cherubini, and set the Crystron cluster and that's your board right there. Depending on the matchup, you either eat the Cherubini or not. Again, the destruction protection can be nice in some matchups. But yeah, this is the same board as before, but you still have your normal summon. So usually when you have the normal summon, you either want to have another Thistvern or Smiger next to the Cherubini, make SP for example, or if you have Tristaros, you can normal summon it. You can also, because you don't use Thistvern here, if you have the Thistvern, you can also just normal summon the Thistvern, pop itself, or pop the Cherubini to get the Tristaros early, so you are more resilient into Handtraps. So that's why I like the Terrortop combo a lot, but let's just rewind a bit to the spot where we can be nibbed. So we have the Cherubini on board, and we had the Sulfador, we had the Spanish, this Engrave, and we had the Tristaros and the Cluster, we sent those. And now we wanted to revive our Tristaros, being summon number 5. Now everything from this point out, if they don't nib here, we have the same anti-nib line as the last combo. So the only difference would be this. So let's say they nib here. You can chain Tristaros to that nib, get a Sulfafnir out or another Sulfador, and then you synchro these into a Samurai Destroyer. Now you will lose the whole board, and you'll get a nib token. This is not a nib token. Let's just take this card. You get a nib token. Board is gone, but the Samurai Destroyer was removed by an opponent's card effect, so it can revive a machine monster from your grave. Where is this here? In this case, it would be itself, because we want a Synchro monster on board, so that we can use the Tristaros effect in the grave and pop the Samurai Destroyer to special summon 2 Synchros. Now, you can decide whether you want to go Cyber Dragon Infinity here, but what I like to do here is get out another Tristaros and a level 5. And then you can synchro these 2 into your Skeletos, which gets you back the Cluster. And now through a nib you have this setup, which doesn't seem much, but remember we only use the Terrortop, they use the nib. So into the nib we trade having this. During your opponent's turn you can go Crystron Cluster, pop your Skeletos and a monster from your opponent, a card up from your opponent, or 2 cards from your opponent. But if you pop your Skeletos and 1 card of your opponent, you can then trigger this to get back the Tristaros to kind of layer your interruptions a bit more. So now you still have the Tristaros to go into a 7 or a 5. So yeah, the Terrortop still, I thought first the Terrortop is a bit bad into nib, but it's actually fine. It trades well. It's not the best board into nib, but it trades well. Whereas Kashtira line with Fenrir and Rysard does not trade as well into it. All right, let's go into the next combo. One of the reasons I wasn't very convinced about the Terrortop engine at first is because I thought it was redundant to the Crystron line. So if you draw Crystron engine and Speedroid, then they don't add much. That's not true, which I'll show you in this combo. It actually gives you a lot of playroom. It makes your combo better, plus it lets you play into stuff better. So let me show you that right now. First, I'll go uninterrupted, and then I'll talk about Handtraps. So you go Terrortop. And Taktomborg. Oh, I also chose the Thistvern in this segment. This could be a Tristaros or a Smiger, although Smiger, that means you can't do certain things in that line. So this is the most flexible piece in that scenario. But the other ones also work. You can make a better combo that way. But let's keep the Thistvern in hand first. We special the Taktomborg, and you link these into Cherubini. Now, you have different ways of playing this. You can send first to check for Handtraps. That's what I would do game 1. Game 2, I would summon the Thistvern, because that gives you options. Either you can pop the Thistvern and get a tuner out, but then you cannot link this off, obviously. The Tristaros, that is. But I'll talk about that in a second. First, we just go with the vanilla combo. You send the Smiger. And before you do anything, you can normal summon the Thistvern, summon number 4, go into SP, summon number 5. If they nib that, sure, we don't really care. If they don't, we have an SP that can both dodge nibs and imperms, so that's nice. So we can then use our graveyard pieces to get some searches, and use the inclusion to get the last piece. Use the solve by discarding the Sulfador, pop itself, and special summon the Tristaros. Now we have the Tristaros for the eventual nib, and we still have our grave set up so that we can combo. So what we want to do here is we want to summon the Sulfador by popping the inclusion, and then use the Sulfador to mill 2. The cluster because I want to have it, and the Thistburn just for follow-up. If you play Rosenix or Praziordal, you obviously send that. You can also consider sending another inclusion for a revive. That's up to you. I'll just put the most flexible follow-up piece here. So what we do here is we're going to synchro into the Skeletus. Again, getting us the cluster back because we used Smiger for the inclusion. And then we can use the Tristaros to pop and get out 2 level 5s, triggering the Skeletus to get back the Tristaros. And then we're going to go into Nova and Infinity. And lastly, we can banish the inclusion from the grave, summon a level 5 from the grave, set our trap, and we are good to go. So this segment is basically what we have with the 1-card combo, but what we add with having the Terrortop Engine is we have the SP, which both lets us play through Handtraps better, but also we get the level 5 body and the trap. So that means with the Tristaros, we actually have access to Aquarion now, summoning the Citri, synchroning these, and banishing 3 cards, while also having set up follow-up with a Solve and the Thistburn in the graveyard, and recursion with the cluster. But I talked about game 1 a bit, so let's go back a bit and let's see what we can do if we want to play around Lancea a bit. So we're gonna move back to the point where we had Cherubini on the field. We have the Thistburn in hand. And here, usually what I like to assume is opponent doesn't shotgun the Lancea. Obviously, if they shotgun the Lancea, you would play this differently too. But usually they want to keep it for when you have something to banish, so that you're already committed to a send of Smiger, for example. For example, if I have Tidal in hand and they shotgun Lancea at me, I'm not going to send Smiger, I'm going to send one of the 5s, so I can still play. But you can normal summon the Thistburn, and just before you send with the Cherubini, you use the Thistburn, pop itself, get out the Tristaros, then you can send with the Cherubini, and now if they want to Lancea you here, you have the Tristaros live. Now note, if they watch this video and they know this line, they can chain the Lancea on the Thistburn effect to pop itself, but then you have a Tristaros plus whatever you have in your hand, I guess, Handtraps. And obviously you can also, instead of the Thistburn, you could have opened the Tristaros, and then they cannot chain it on that. So they're kind of in a hard place right now because they don't know when to Lancea. But let's say the Lancea is here. We can chain the Tristaros here and summon the Sulfador and synchro into our Skeletus. Now, in this case, I actually don't want to use the add effect yet. You can, if you want to switch the combo up, I'll show you in a second, but in this scenario, how I would play it, I would just not use the add effect. Instead, I'll just keep it and summon the Sulfador from the grave by popping this. And then you have chaining 1, chaining 2. Getting back your Tristaros through the Skeletus, and then the Sulfador can send a cluster and any piece of follow-up you want. Obviously, if you have a Crystron in your hand, you can send Solve and extend from here. So let's just go with that then. And now you have a choice. So if you added with the Skeletus before, you just added any piece of follow-up, you can just leave this, have Aquarion threat. But what I'd like to do is just make the second Skeletus here. which on summon then adds you your cluster that you just sent. And then you can set that. And again, make sure to not have the Cherubini point to the Edescalados, because what you want to do is, during your opponent's turn, Crystron cluster, pop it and one of your opponent's cards, which will trigger it to get back the Tristeros, which you can then put in the Cherubini zone. And so this way you have the pop with the cluster, you have a recycle, and you also can go into a 5 or a 7 with the Tristeros if they do anything. So against Lancia, you still with 2 cards put up these 2 interactions, so and a lot of follow-up. So if your opponent doesn't kill you here or goes into White Binder, for example, banish your graveyard, you should be in a good position with whatever 3 cards you have in your hand. Obviously, if you had another Crystron card, you could have used the Sulfafnir and the whole board would have looked different as well. So definitely has game against Lancia with any additional engine, even the Speedroid one. Now the last thing I wanted to talk about is Shifter, another transcript hand trap, which is definitely worse for you than Lancia, but I just wanted to show you what you can do, and then hopefully the rest of your hand will help you out. It definitely did for me yesterday. I got shifted and I had an Ash Blossom in hand as an extra interruption, and it was enough to get me over the hump. Now, obviously opponent has options with a shifter. Either they shotgun it or they wait until you want to send something. Let's just talk about both scenarios. Let's say they shotgun it. You can go special Terrortop, get target on board, special that, link these 2 into an SP, and then you can just go with the normal summon this turn, pop itself, it's banished for the Tristeros. So now you have the SP, you have the Tristeros, which goes into a 5 or a 7, and you have whatever you have left in hand. Now, if they wait with the shifter, let's have this here. You're gonna go Terrortop to target on board, link these into Cherubini as you normally would, and then they throw the shifter so that you cannot use the cost of Cherubini. What you can do then is normal summon at this turn, use the effect, pop the Cherubini to get the Tristeros. This is banished because you're on the shifter now. And now during your opponent's turn, you don't have the SP, but you gain the option of going into a Legasha by summoning out a level 5 from the deck if your opponent does something. So opponent does something, you get a level 5, you synchro this and the 5 into a Legasha and pop their highest attack monster, plus you draw a card. Another hand you could have would be something like Inclusion Tristeros. This is generally a bit better. Let's say again they shotgun the shifter, otherwise you would obviously normal summon the Tristeros. The shifter you chain, you get a Smiger, go into Amatrix. Let's just do that right now. So let's say you start with this and they kept the shifter, they shifter you now, chain Tristeros, summon the Smiger, synchro these off. They both land in the grave, which is very nice. Go into Amatrix, now you're on the shifter, but Smiger can get you whatever you need. Obviously in this case we have the inclusion in hand, and then Tristeros can pop the Amatrix, special summon 2 5s for an infinity. There it is. And you have the cluster, you have still this to do something with it. Actually, if you have this, what you would do is you summon a Sulf and another Tristeros. Then you would use the inclusion to get the Sulf, pop this, summon, don't banish anything here, and then go to infinity here. Now you kind of have the setup that you would normally have, but through a shifter. So definitely better for your opponent to shotgun the shifter here. So what you would do then is, opponent shotguns the shifter, you go for any further disruptions, go to Tristeros, go inclusion, get the Sulf effect, summon itself, pop this, it gets banished. This sends for effect, so we can actually use it. The cards just get banished. The only card that we want to banish is the cluster here. Banish the cluster from deck, because now we can actually go and synchro these two. They get banished into a Skeletus, which will then unsummon, add back your cluster, set the cluster, send it over to your opponent. Opponent does something, and again we have the setup cluster and Skeletus. Pop this and just check. Yeah, if this synchro summoned card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can summon one Crystron from a grave or banishment. So this doesn't have to go to the grave. So opponent does something, pop, and special back, and now you still have the synchro here. So that plus 3 more cards in your hand, which hopefully there's at least 1 or even better 2 hand traps among them, and you can still survive against a shifter. So definitely a lot of things that surprised me about this deck list and how it plays against shifter, how the Terrortop engine performs. That's the end of the video. Thanks everyone who made it this far. Again, shout out to Jenny and Atrocity for helping me with this deck and talk about it, some ratios, etc. And let me know in the comments, what combo would you do differently? If you have a replay, just show it, post it there. I will look at it. I don't know if YouTube actually allows a link, but sometimes I'll check the forbidden messages, maybe, unless there are some slurs in there. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you next time.